Good evening, and welcome to the City Council, Norman Utilities Authority, Norman Municipal Authority, and Norman Tax Increment Finance Authority meeting of September 10th, 2024. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Ball?
Present.
Councilmember Peacock?
Here.
Councilmember Montoya?
Here.
Councilmember Grant is absent. Councilmember Nash?
Here.
Councilmember Hiegel?
Here.
Councilmember Holman?
Here.
Councilmember Dixon?
Here.
Mayor Heikkila?
I am here. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 1 is a proclamation of the mayor of the city of Norman, Oklahoma, proclaiming the week of September 17th through 2024 as Constitution Week in the city of Norman. I need a motion to acknowledge receipt of the proclamation.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and second. The motion on the floor is to acknowledge receipt of the proclamation. Council members, you may cast your vote.
And the motion to acknowledge receipt of the proclamation passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll read the proclamation. A proclamation of the mayor of the city of Norman, Oklahoma, proclaiming the week of September 17th, the week of September 17th through 23rd, 2024, is Constitution Week in the city of Norman. Whereas September 17th, 2024 marks the 235th anniversary of the framing of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition of this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which shall commemorate the occasion, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, President of the United States of America designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Whereas the Black Beaver Chapter, National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, is a nonprofit, non-political, volunteer women's service organization dedicated to promoting patriotism, preserving American history, and securing America's future through better education. Now, therefore, I, Mayor of the city of Norman, Oklahoma, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through 23rd, 2024, as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution had, framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. I'd like to recognize Jane Harris. Come up and get, there she is.
In 2024, we recognize the 69th anniversary of Constitution Week. NSDAR past President General Gertrude S. Caraway was responsible for the annual designation of September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. The DAR made its own resolution for Constitution Week, which was adopted on April 21, 1955. Members of the United States Congress received the DAR resolution, and on June 7, 1955, the resolution was discussed in the Senate. The first resolution to observe Constitution Week was made on June 14, 1955, by Senator William F. Noland of California. Following the passage of the resolution by both houses of Congress, President Eisenhower issued his proclamation on August 19, 1955. The first observance of Constitution Week was so successful that on January 5th, 1956, Senator Nolan introduced a Senate joint resolution to have the president designate September 17th through 23rd annually as Constitution Week. The resolution was adopted on July 23rd, 1956, and signed into public law 915 on August 2nd, 1956. Black Beaver Chapter DAR appreciates you recognizing this for the city of Norman.
It's our
Thank
honor
you.
to do so. Thank you, ma'am. It's now time for council announcements, and I'll start with one.
Good evening. Seems like we just did this a week ago. Let's see. A couple days ago was our Cleveland County Fair. I got to spend some time out there, met a lot of great people. It's kind of an honor to be in that building for the very last time before they tore it down, and we're going to get a brand-new fairground building, so that's exciting. Want to celebrate the opening of a brand-new business here in Norman. It's called Center Stage. It's over off Flood Avenue. It's a children's theater, and they work a lot with disadvantaged kids, kids with disabilities. So an amazing organization, so I encourage you to check them out. Friday the 13th, we have all kinds of stuff going on if you feel lucky. Westwood Pool, 21 plus at 7 p.m. It's going to have a scuba do dive night. 7 p.m. on Campus Corner will be the Friday night concert series. Our mayor will be speaking Friday afternoon at Embassy Suites for our State of the City address, so looking forward to that. And let's see. And if you didn't notice, past 2 Saturdays, we've had some football going on here, so the town's been kind of crazy. Be prepared, because in the following 2 weeks, we have 2 more games, including Tennessee, so we're about to see what it's all about to be in the SEC. And I've requested through Darrell to find out if we can see how much these games are bringing in. Just total revenue, how many visitors we have. Information's not quite there yet, but as soon as I have it, I'll be sharing it. One good piece of news is that for the people that did show up, they were here all 4 days, according to cell phone data. So apparently our city is doing a pretty good job keeping everybody happy and wanting to come here. Last thing, fall sports here in Norman through NOC. Our youth sports is going strong, baseball, softball, and it's too late to sign up for those, but so many amazing things going on here in Norman. Just proud to be a part of it, so that's all I have.
Councilmember?
Thank you. I'm going to make an announcement on behalf of Councilmember Grant tonight. She's not here this evening, and so she asked that I draw special attention to September's Second Friday Art Walk, which takes place this Friday from 6 to 9 in the Walker Arts District downtown. There was going to be an opening for a new business on Main Street called Uncanny Art House, which is a cooperative art hub located at 106 East Main Street. Their grand opening features a performance by Samantha Crane and exhibitions from KT Duffy and Saray Suarez. Uncanny Art House is dedicated to providing resources and opportunities for artists with a focus on inclusivity. They offer a welcoming space for artists of all ages and experience levels to create, connect, and share their work with the community. So highly recommend everybody gets out and enjoys Second Friday Art Walk. It's planned to be a very beautiful night out weather-wise, so get out there and support this new business. Thank you.
Councilmember?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Ward 3 in Norman, Oklahoma. I have 2 announcements, and I also have an announcement for Councilmember Grant. So first, in an effort to poll Ward 3 on the 2 items that will be coming to a vote to council next week regarding the arena and then the $600 million TIF, please email me at ward3, that's the number 3, at normanok.gov, or you can call or text me at 405-876-3143. You can do so by either providing your opposition to or your support for. So please reach out to me and provide your input. Then, second, to highlight a couple of things from our budget that we passed back in June. The city's fiscal year 25 budget is based on a 2% sales tax growth and a 4% use tax growth. Then combined, the sales and use tax revenues are projected to grow at a rate of 2.4%, whereas conversely, our general fund net expenses are projected to grow at an average rate of 3.9%. So as of now, our projected general fund expenses exceed our projected revenues. Then, if you've ever wanted to try CrossFit, it's Buddy Week at my CrossFit gym, Coda CrossFit. So if you would like to join me either Thursday or Friday morning at 5:30, feel free to drop in. Then the announcement for Councilmember Grant, she asked me to read this announcement in her absence. So as some may recall, a renewed and contract with both the Neighborhood Alliance and our Norman Neighborhood Alliance Coordinator. They help neighborhoods, whether they are HOAs, voluntary associations, or unorganized, come together in tangible ways to strengthen their communities. Some fruits of that organizing effort are taking place tonight in the Old Silk Stockings neighborhood, boundaried by Robinson, Porter, James Garner, and Main Street. Old Silk Stockings Neighborhood Night Out runs from 6 to 7:30 at Trinity Baptist Church. If you are learning about this event after the fact but want to connect with your neighbors, visit sni.normanok.gov/old-silk-stocking-neighborhood. And lastly, for those of us here with us and watching online, thank you all for being here.
Councilmember?
No announcements this week.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember?
Good evening, City of Norman and Ward 6. Several weeks ago, by proclamation, we said that September 11th was going to be Virtue Center Day, so technically today is Virtue Center Day Eve. So happy Virtue Center Day to everybody, and want to continue to thank them for the wonderful work that they do in our community and all the support that they provide for our citizens and families. Also, I am having a town hall kind of gathering on Monday, September 16th at 6 p.m. at the 12th Street Rec Center, which is at 1701 12th Avenue Northeast. Again, it's at 6 p.m. We'll just be in one of the side conference rooms, and that way Ward 6 residents have a chance to ask some questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them if I can, or bring questions back to the city manager and get stuff figured out. And I have no announcements for Councilmember Grant, so I'm going to...
Councilmember Holmes?
Thank you. I do have an announcement from Councilmember Grant as well. So in regard to Art Walk, I also want to encourage folks to attend this Friday, second Friday Art Walk in downtown Norman. It will be one of the nicer weather-wise art walks we have all year round. So, and we do have some new businesses that are relocating, but within downtown Norman, like Uncanny Alley, that have some pretty amazing work. I would encourage everybody to check out. The announcement from Councilmember Grant, she asked me to read this as they are attending a municipal league conference in Tulsa this week, and the mayor, I think, is leaving after this meeting to head up there. So, but Councilmember Grant wanted me to also remind everyone that on Friday, September 13th, from 6 to 8 p.m. in Andrews Park, you can kick off your art walk tour with an event called Celebration, a celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. Enjoy an evening filled with vendors, artists, dancers, and performers showcasing enduring cultural heritages within the Hispanic community. This event is hosted by the Norman Public Library Central and brought to you in partnership with Norman Parks and Recreation, Fred Jones Museum of Art, and Firehouse Art Center. And also, just on that same note, I would remind everybody, if you don't know, the Norman Central Library is currently operating in a temporary location on South Santa Fe, just right behind Scratch Restaurant. So they have a very nice space. They put up a really nice and neat mural on the side of the building and are making the best out of the situation we have right now in regard to the library situation. So be sure to check that out. And then also, there is a ribbon cutting this Friday for a new business in Ward 4 on the corner of Lindsay and Berry, formerly Penny Hill Subs, is a new business called Coach's Corner. will be opening on Friday at 4:30 is the ribbon cutting for that. So be sure to stop by and check that out and support. It is a locally owned family business too, so even better. Also want to repeat an announcement I made a few weeks ago about construction on Highway 9 that's happening right now. This is an ODOT project, and it is updating and widening the bridges over Bishop Creek on Highway 9 between Jenkins and 12th Avenue Southeast. So I know it's not the most opportune time to have Highway 9 have construction on it, but there really isn't any time of year that's best for that. And so this is when ODOT has decided to do it, and so that's what is going on. And plan around that or accordingly if you can. And let's see. Also want to remind everybody the Community Planning and Transportation Committee meeting on the 26th of this month will be where we will be talking about our regular public transit update from city staff on ridership, on ongoing projects related to public transit, and then we'll also generally get updates on street construction projects or other infrastructure-related things that we have going on in the city. So if any of those things are of interest to you, then 4 p.m. on the 26th of September here at City Hall and live streamed on YouTube for the CPTC committee. And that's all I have this week. Thank you.
Councilmember?
No announcements from Ward 8.
Thank you, sir. None from me either. Next item on the agenda is the consent docket. This item is placed on the agenda so the City Council, by unanimous consent, can designate those routine items that they wish to be approved or acknowledged by one motion. If any item proposed does not meet with approval of all council members, then that item will be heard in regular order. Staff recommends that item 2 through item 10 be placed on the consent docket. I need a motion to place items 2 through 10 on the consent docket.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Motion on the floor is to place items 2 through 10 on the consent docket. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to place items 2 through 10 on the consent docket passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent docket.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Are there any comments from council regarding any item on the consent docket? Hearing none. The motion on the floor is to approve the consent docket. Council members, you may cast your vote.
And the motion to approve the consent docket passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 11, a resolution amending the Norman 2025 Land Use and Transportation Plan so as to remove property generally located south of West Main Street, west of Ed Noble Parkway, north of West Lindsay Street, and east of 36th Avenue Southwest from the commercial designation, open space designation, high-density residential designation, and low-density residential designation, and place the same in mixed-use designation. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the resolution.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and second. Is Mr. Gunnar Joyce is the representative of the applicant.
Mayor, and good evening, council. Here tonight to talk about this exciting project, Bob Moore Farms North. And I'm clicking here. Don't. Bryce, probably operator error.
Springs into action. It did work in rehearsal.
I think the battery might have died on it.
That does make me feel slightly better, though.
Gunnar, I think he's going to advance them for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Bryce. So tonight we're here on Bob Moore Farms North, and Mayor, as you said, it's a 2025 comp plan amendment, a rezoning of PUD, and also a preliminary plat. So we got 3 items in front of you all, companion items, so we'll give a presentation on all 3. And this is the site. So we are south of Main Street and east of 36, 55 acres. Perfect. Thank you very much. And I got it, sweet, game on. 55 and a half acres. So there was a little bit of a misconception when this was very initially filed, and I think we got it at pre-development, but just to touch on it in case some comments have continued to be out there. This is not all the ownership owned by the Moore family. It does go all the way to the river. So this is just the 55.5 acres highlighted in yellow there, not proposing any development south of Willow Bend or any of the property that abuts Lindsay Street and 36 as they connect there. So just the 55 acres there. And really part of the theme tonight, and we'll keep touching on it, is the downzoning of the land. And so right now you can see the existing 2025 and zoning designations are intense commercial. The existing zoning C2 is as intense of a commercial zoning as the city of Norman has. It has no height limitation. It has no impervious coverage maximum. And the PUD that you see there is a 1997 PUD that also was substantial commercial development, big box retail, and as you'll see in the next slide, excessive parking. So this is a site plan that is now something that is disincentivized in Norman with the update with the reduction of parking requirements in Norman. This is something we don't want to see anymore, and that's something that the Moore family, with the efforts of PMA, the project advisors that assisted here, worked on extensively. So this project that you're about to see here is really the baby of 18 months plus of feasibility study. What does the community need? What does Norman need? And how can we make this property an asset to the community and an amenity to the community, and not something like this that is large, big box, outdated retail design, maximized impervious coverage, and as you can see there, no open space, no landscaping. So here's the site plan they came up with, and immediately, as you can see, a substantial commitment to open space. It is 26% open space, and that is not an impervious calculation. That's 20% of the total acreage as open, usable amenity space. There are a lot of pocket parks. It is extremely walkable and pedestrian friendly with connections to developments that are already in the area, like the library, like Sam's Club, like the commercial restaurants and users on Ed Noble Parkway. So this is something that very walkable, very pedestrian friendly, but also extremely less intense than what is allowed under the current entitlements by downzoning from 55 acres of commercial to an apartment community with approximately 642 dwelling units. And again, the needs of the community, as we're going through a comp plan update right now, and we'll talk about at the very end, something Norman desperately needs is housing. So that's what this applicant and the Moore family has done, is looked at how do we maximize dollar amount on our square footage, but instead how do we propose a development that the community needs, and the community does need housing. It also needs green infrastructure. It needs open space, and that is what is proposed here. The stormwater plan, I'll click through some of the site plans and the engineering documents, but the stormwater plan is really a benefit to the project, not just this 55 acres, but offsite as well. It's a regional stormwater infrastructure. That Pond B, I don't have a clicker now, but the southeast corner, that retention pond is existing right now, but is not compliant with the Norman's stormwater regulations. This project will bring it into compliance, and then it also will create, as we go north, another retention ponds. Both of those are wet retention ponds that are going to be amenities, just like as you look all the way to the north off-site, the existing Strawberry Lake. So this site will have 3 retention ponds that are amenitized, that are walkable, that retain the natural landscape of the property. It is not a maximized impervious layout like what would be allowed under existing entitlements. Zooming in here, it's the northern half of the site plan. This is really the developed out area. And then this is the third item that you'll vote on is the preliminary plat. And just so you can see again, the three areas, there's commercial, retail in red, that's the northern area. In blue is the multifamily, and then the stormwater infrastructure along the southeast corner of the property. And we went through Planning Commission, received approval with a 5-2 vote, and really the only negative comments that we heard at Planning Commission and the only negative comments that we believe to have really continued are traffic. This was the site, this was the slide that we talked about at Planning Commission, the typical traffic slide that we talk about when we give these presentations. This proposal has to go through a full TIA. That's been done by TEC and BJ Hawkins. It then gets reviewed by city staff. The TIA has a recommendation paragraph, and it says that no improvements are necessary for this proposed development. City reviews that, and then that is a highlighted portion from the city staff report on traffic that shows that they recommend approval and capacity exceeds demand in this area. I left it at that at Planning Commission, but let's really dive into the numbers behind it and the reasoning why. So first, a trip comparison of what could be done under the current zoning and what is proposed. And this site is now 1/3 of the traffic of what full commercial development could be if all 55 acres were developed through commercial zoning. So as you can see there highlighted, this proposed project is about 5,600 cars per day, and a current zoning commercial development is upwards of 15,000 cars per day. Also look at existing traffic counts around the city and look at some of the roadway infrastructure that Norman has and the data behind it. And so when you look at the highlighted 55 acres there, you can see traffic counts along 36th Avenue and where Lindsay starts to connect are at its peak, about 10,500 vehicles per day. As we move south, 9,000 vehicles per day. The closest comparison that we have with those numbers is up there on the northeast side with Berry Road. Berry Road is a 2-lane road. As you can see down there in the corner, 36th Avenue is 4 lanes. So we look at other 4-lane roads, you can see 24th Avenue has 18,000 cars per day. As you get up to Main Street, that's that 31,000 number. As you keep moving north, it's 18,000 cars per day. When you look at Lindsay Street has 21,000 cars per day. And again, we look back at this site right now, we're talking 10,000 cars per day. So this is the infrastructure in place is a 4-lane road of 36th Avenue. That's why it has capacity. That's where the TIA says capacity exceeds demand. That's also what David Riesland's staff report says. But again, as we go further, we look at Willow Bend Road. So Willow Bend is about 34 feet wide, and that is city standard width for a connector road. So when we look at a connector street, what is a typical connector road average? On average, it's between 1,000 vehicles per day and 5,000 vehicles per day. So a typical collector road has capacity for acceptable level of service. And the way you figure out acceptable level of service, BJ, I learned so much about traffic today. Thank you for this. Acceptable level of service is delay time. So an acceptable level of service or an A grade is less than 10 seconds of delay. A C grade is still considered acceptable delay. And you can have acceptable delay on a collector road all the way up to 10,000 vehicles per day. The maximum capacity for a collector road is 20,000 vehicles per day. So Willow Bend is the width and infrastructure of a collector road. So when we look at those numbers and then look at what exists right now on Willow Bend, we have 500 vehicles per day, substantially less than what is average, substantially less than what is acceptable with levels of service. Then we look at the proposed development here, which is full build-out, proposal of 2030. By 2030, full build-out proposed traffic on Willow Bend is 1,360 vehicles per day. Again, when we look at typical road average, we are at the very bottom of a typical collector road threshold. And when we're talking acceptable levels of service, we're still acceptable at 10,000 vehicles per day. This full build-out is 1,300. So the remaining capacity for acceptable levels of service is still 8,600 vehicles per day. So you could put this development in over and over and over, and we would still be under the threshold for acceptable level of service. A good comparison, if we just look across the street, is Western View Drive. Western View Drive right now, vehicles per day is 1,483. So after this build-out in 2030, we are still less than what exists right now on Western View Drive. So that's why the TIA says no negative impacts are expected. That's why it doesn't require additional improvements. It's the numbers behind it. We've also had talk about site distance and spacing. BJ can talk much more into this, but this just shows the distance between where we start to have topography on 36th Avenue and maybe some visual issues. It's 740 feet away, so it's 250 yards or 2.5 football fields of clear sight line before we get to Willow Bend. But in addition to all that, TIA says no improvements are necessary. We know that we've been talking about traffic. We know that that has been a talking point throughout this whole project. And so this developer and this family is agreeing to put in striping for designated left turn lanes on Willow Bend Road and Western View Drive. So the TIA doesn't require it, the City of Norman has not required it, but being a good community partner and hearing the feedback, they're more than happy to put in striping for left turn lanes. Throughout this whole process, we have received feedback. We've had a substantial turnout at the pre-development meeting for this project. This is the protest map. It is less than 1% of the notification area. And then when we talk about the need and why this proposal and why after 18 months of feasibility they're adding housing and not maximizing commercial development, it's this. It's the AIM-Norman comp plan update that we are actively working on as a city, shows that in order to meet the 1.5% growth rate that we're planning for in AIM-Norman, Norman needs to add 23,225 dwelling units by 2045. In order to hit that number, we need 1,100 housing units a year. And that graph there is housing starts, both commercial, single family, and multifamily in Norman since 2000. Norman has only hit 1,100 3 times. So housing is a critical need in Norman. It's been said at planning commissions for probably about 12 months, maybe 18 months. It's been said here, housing's a need. This is a project that is proposing substantial housing in Norman in an area that is infill development, not on the edges of town, not suburban development. It's reducing what is zoned as commercial and going to residential. It's a thoughtful plan by this family. We really think it's a good layout and project. So in conclusion, just to hit on exactly what I mentioned, substantial downzoning provides much needed housing, a very impressive commitment to open space, recommendation of approval by Planning Commission, and a staff approval of the preliminary plat. So with that, happy to take questions.
Council, do you have any questions? Councilmember Peacock.
Thank you. So I just really kind of want to drill down on the detention stuff a little bit. You said that this was like a regional detention solution, retention, I apologize.
Yeah,
So that means that you are collecting stormwater that is coming off-site onto your property and holding it, retaining it, and then releasing it? Could you speak a little bit to the hold and release part of that?
Yes, it would probably be a disservice, though. I think we have SRB, civil engineers that could probably talk much more better than I can. But as they walk up here, I know that that has been, before we even filed, they wanted to make sure that the stormwater plan exceeded what was the bare minimum, because there's kind of some shared ownership in some of the commercial on Ed Noble. And so they want to make sure that there's never any, obviously, there's land to the south as well. So no downstream impact that they wanted. They wanted to make sure that this was regional and an asset to the surrounding land. But please, thank you.
Yes, Chuck Twyble with SRB Engineering, 100 Northeast Fifth Street in Oklahoma City. And yes, on the detention pond drainage basin, it's like 480 acres is the drainage basin, and it extends about 1.5 miles to the north, even north of Robinson Street. Yeah. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's exactly
and-
what I was
and-
looking for.
And all that drainage basin will go through our detention ponds. You know, we're not providing detention for that whole area, just, you know, our tracks. But, yeah, we will be enlarging and modifying the detention basins
Okay.
to act per our ordinance.
And then what does the outflow condition look like? Are we metering water slowly off the property, or is it just evaporation?
At the very south end of the detention ponds, we don't need to do any modifications. The outlet structure, the way it was designed, is going to handle it.
Okay.
We're just going to increase the bank width and clean it up, and and the storm sewer pipe going into it, we're going to make that more efficient.
Awesome, okay, thank you. A couple more questions, you might stick around. Are there any plans to irrigate the site out of the retention pond?
Yes, so we've talked about that and appreciate those comments. And then we went back with the development team to basically talk about how can we maintain the natural corridors there and the natural buffers. And so that is definitely the plan. It's not a, plan to be just concrete wall and make it kind of the man-made manufactured. The existing Strawberry Lake to the north is really a habitat for wildlife. And the owner has felt that that is a huge benefit to, one, the current property, and two, the potential for residents to come in. Okay. And so the plan there is to make the buffer and the edges of these retention ponds as natural as they can be, which then, of course, is how do we landscape that? How do we keep all that vegetation alive? Okay. But that is certainly the plan, is making that a very natural, there's walking trails all throughout it, so a big amenity to the residents that would live there.
Okay, and then, I guess the question was, do you plan on you basically using the retention pond as a irrigation source? Basically use it to irrigate the rest of the property so you wouldn't have to consume, municipal water to do irrigation?
At that point, I don't know if we've got to that stage of development yet. Chuck, I don't know if you've got a quick answer to that, but.
No, we don't see it. I don't think the depth for the water is going to be there. There just won't be enough volume to irrigate out of that.
Do you think it could partially service for that?
It would have to be some pumps that would need to be maintained and stuff, so it may be a maintenance issue.
Well, the reason I ask is obviously stormwater is huge, but also drinking water is another huge issue here in Norman. And so anything that we can do to make the use of our resources more efficient and stretch them further, I think is going to be a
Yeah, we'll
positive.
keep that in mind.
I appreciate it.
And
Try
I
to
think,
implement that.
throughout the project, the Moore family's really shown the desire to be a community partner and community player, and so I think we'll take that back and pass that along for sure.
I appreciate the responses.
Yeah.
Councilmember Montoya?
All right, so Councilmember Peacock answered questions about stormwater. So one question I have is, when does the applicant plan on breaking ground and building the apartment complex?
Any of you guys want to tackle expected timeline development?
Hi, good evening. Andy Wilkinson, PMA, Project Management Advisors. Right now the plan is to get through this phase of the process. I would assume design, context-wise, we talk about the 18-month process in the deep planning of how this was programmed and taking into consideration all the factors that Gunnar so eloquently presented, is I would assume design and permitting probably about 12 months. And then, of course, it becomes kind of the financing component. But I think assumptions are about 12 months for development area 1, and then subsequently development area 2. So, horizon for full development, I think we talked about 2030, but the reality is probably more a couple years later than that due to absorption of phase 1 and then when you kind of program and plan phase 2. So kind of the traditional development kind of timeline.
Okay, all right.
Hope that answers your
Thanks.
question.
Yeah.
You got it.
Might have other follow-up questions later, but that's all I have for now.
Councilmember Holman?
Thank you. Similar questions about we talked about them yesterday, Gunnar, on the traffic issue. I definitely appreciate the addition of the left turn. But we did talk about how Western View and 36th can be a little difficult for the residents in that area currently to turn left off of 36th onto Western View and out of Western View and onto 36th. And without this development existing currently. And might be really for our own city staff about the future of that intersection, future plans for it as far as improvements that may be necessary at full build-out or not. David or, let's see, Scott here. But just if, right now it's 4 lanes, if it's anticipated at some point that a center turn lane will be added to 36 on this area, on this stretch, if it will need a traffic signal at some point, if this property would be paying into a recoupment for that. If there are any others, which I doubt, since I think they've all been developed before the time period of that would have existed. And then same thing about Creekdale Drive, the other connection. Currently 4 lanes. Do you anticipate a center or left turn lane needing to be added at both those intersections at some point, and/or traffic signals or roundabouts even, but any of that?
Sure. David Riesland, Transportation Engineer. Western View and Willow Bend has been on our radar for, I want to say, 3 or 4 years. The citizen inquiries about that we've done 2 or 3 different intersection evaluations. It doesn't meet the requirements for a traffic signal right now, but it's not that far away, to be honest with you. In terms of a center turn lane, if we were to signalize, we would definitely try to increase the capacity of the intersection by providing left turn lanes into the from the north into Western View, or the other way around. Okay. From the north into Western View, from the south into Willow Bend. Creekdale, honestly, has not been on our radar. I've not received an inquiry about that. It doesn't mean we can't start looking at it. But the same would apply there, that if it did warrant signalization, we would prepare a project that would provide the left turn lanes as well.
Okay, and just because this project proposal has a street connecting and lining up with Creekdale and making that a four-leg intersection, so that just made me wondered about improvements that may be necessary due to this development because of that. And then things like right-of-way, if we needed to widen it to add the center turn lane, available right-of-way to do that, and then, yeah, if there was any recoupment in that area, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, there's no identified project there that we could recoup.
This one might be one.
It could be one, yes. It's not yet.
And then Willow Bend is, as mentioned, 36 feet wide. Are there any plans that this would require it to be striped, double striped, or anything like that down the middle?
With the numbers that BJ has in his traffic study, yeah, it would rise to the level of where we would consider striping the center lane, yes.
Okay, thank you, David. Appreciate that. And then, Gunnar, we'd talked about the green space and the path, and one of the things I was really highlighting was the connections to Ed Noble Parkway. Could you, you briefly mentioned it, but I think one of the benefits of this development is more people living in close proximity to the existing commercial development in Ed Noble Parkway, and residents having easy access to it by car and by foot and bike and whatever means of transportation they choose.
Absolutely happy to talk about it. And we actually, after we spoke, went back with the ownership group, and I learned more information about that has always been front and center in their mind, and that walkability and bike trails over to the commercial on Ed Noble is something that absolutely was always in kind of the first stages of development. But how do we increase that throughout as we continue? And there's common ownership with some of that commercial. And there's actually talk about, now that the commercial parking requirements are removed, maybe finding ways to take out some of the existing parking, and maybe there's additional commercial out parcels that could pop up. And usually what drives that is rooftops, and so these two projects can go hand in hand by having more people live in this area and have either multimodal access over to that commercial area. I think you can see it be rejuvenated.
Okay. Yeah, that's, I think, a big highlight of
Absolutely.
this. And then the green space as an amenity, it's open to the public. It's not a public park, but this is an open area, I guess, basically, along the water and the ponds and all that stuff.
Yeah, right. So that's really one of the driving factors of Norman Center Court being that public street right through the middle of it. Will have sidewalks and be the main kind of mode of access that you can get up and down into the walking trails. You could walk using Norman Center Court up to the library. Up by the library, you can get into that walking trail on the east side, and then walk around the retention ponds over there. And so absolutely a very walkable site.
Okay. And then there are not any renderings, correct, of this development?
That's right. The proposal currently is they want to get the project approved and then send out RFPs to different architects, and then kind of look at some of the Class A architects that work on these projects throughout the nation, and then select the one that I think the ownership group is most excited about. I think you definitely are going to see that Class A. Every time we've talked about what it's going to look like, it's the Class A typical amenitized apartment development. We usually do have renderings on kind of smaller sites. I know that we've done maybe the 5 acres or 6 acre sites and show you the 3D renderings from the street view. Since it's such a large site at 55.5 acres, they just haven't engaged a specific architect yet, which is why they don't have renderings that they really could commit to. They don't even have the architect that would design it yet.
And you mentioned the commercial part of it is adaptable to being mixed use, as in commercial, residential, multiple uses in one spot. If the demand is there for it, it can be done.
Absolutely right, and the same is true on the multifamily. So there is the ability on the allowable use side to put in ground floor commercial under the apartment buildings, and then the flip side is true north in the commercial area, that again, if the market's there and justifies it, those commercial buildings could have multifamily units up above them.
Okay. And then you mentioned too that the buildings closest to the single-family neighborhood to the south, those are shorter in height than the rest of the development, and they face the opposite direction of the houses, so there's not balconies they're going to be looking over into anybody's backyard or anything like that.
Absolutely right. So we spent more time talking about that at Planning Commission. I apologize that I brushed over it, but that is a change that was made after filing and hearing the feedback at pre-development. And so when we went into Planning Commission, that was a change to reduce height for those blue buildings that you see there. And really the plan there is that it's a gradual step up to kind of protect the single-family residences from looking at the larger apartment buildings. So that is a reduced height area, and you're correct, they are all laid out to where they face inward and feel more like a single-family house.
Okay. Well, I think that's one of the things I'd commented was that Norman Center Court Drive, maybe as the design's going on, making that more like that main street that you have where the parking is on there. There's the bump outs for people to walk across, help slow the traffic a little bit down. Yeah, like I mentioned, I do like that the buildings are closest to the street and the parking is internal, so as people are driving by, what they see is buildings and not parking lots. I think just finally, I would encourage you, just that typically, I mentioned this too yesterday, when we have a PUD come forward, PUDs typically do have more detailed things like renderings that we can look at. And I mentioned it's one of the reasons I like PUDs more than a regular rezoning is usually gives us more detail about exactly what it is we're approving, and it may not look exactly like it as the drawing, but it gives us and neighbors a better idea of what it is we can expect anyway to see upon development. So I would definitely appreciate that
Absolutely.
in the future. Thank you.
Councilmember Ball?
I was going through the protest letters, and I think you've answered most of the issues that I saw as far as walkability, preserving the natural habitat and wildlife, traffic concerns. And this may kind of touch in with what Councilmember Holman was just saying. But the one thing that all these have in common is your neighbors' property values. Can you discuss the steps you're taking to, and like I said, I'm sure part of it's kind of overlapped here, but you can address that.
Yeah, so it's a common opposition that we receive anytime that we propose really commercial or multifamily. That's one that is often thrown out. I know that he, not necessarily part of the project team tonight, but Richard McCown sitting here has a great response that I know he's said many, many times, so I'm going to plagiarize. But there have been many studies that have been done that actually show that the property values do increase because you're going to see that there is commercial and retail and areas where people want to be. There are amenities that are going to be proposed with this development, and that is where people want to move to. And so the property values increase. Again, we are also going to be protecting them from some of the maybe nuances or nuisances, I apologize, that full commercial development all the way up to Willow Bend could entail. So that would be lights, noise, stormwater runoff, unlimited height all the way up. This is a substantially less intensive development that I think is a thoughtful proposal. Thank you.
Councilmember Montoya?
So going back to traffic, so can you explain why the connection at Norman Center Court to Willow Bend? So why are we pushing, commercial and multifamily traffic into a neighborhood rather than the private street being the collector street and the majority of traffic exiting 36th at the private road?
I tried to take a crash course today as best I could, and you almost got out of it, but BJ, you want to come to answer that directly?
Thank you. BJ Hawkins, Traffic Engineering Consultants. Norman Center Court was always designated as kind of a collector street to go from Edinal Parkway to the south. The original PD, as you could see, kind of had a connection all the way to Willow Bend. So it does create that flow that could be walkability, could be, drivability to access all those commercial businesses without having to get onto the main arterials. So that's why we have collector streets. That's why we have, different types of local streets so that you're not always spilling all the traffic onto the arterial just to go a block or two.
Okay. So I do share the same concerns as the two planning commissioners, Jablonski and Eric Bird. And then I also have concerns because I drive 36th Avenue 6 to 8 times a day round trip. So I witnessed several times whenever people are driving north on 36, and then you come up on a hill and then you hit Willow Bend. So, just this past Sunday, I saw a black Audi going at least 65, 70 miles an hour. So I understand my constituents' concerns in the neighborhood with Norman Center Court coming into their neighborhood. And then I also have the concern on 36th Avenue just because I witness daily people, excessively speeding. So I just have concerns of people turning left off of Willow Bend onto 36th Avenue.
Sure. Obviously, that's an enforcement issue. You can't necessarily protect vehicles from excessive speeding. Any sort of police presence can help bring those down. As far as, capacity, site, obviously, he shared that, the site distance is there adequate for the typical posted speed limit. As far as capacity, you've got a 4-lane arterial can handle up to 40,000 vehicles per day. We're at a fourth of that. So there's plenty of capacity there. The lack of left turns, as was mentioned, could be a concern. Luckily, with that capacity and the limited number of northbound and southbound left turns, they can go in the outside lanes to pass. I looked extensively on the southbound left turning into Willow Bend. You've got less than 10 in the AM peak hour and less than 20 in the PM peak hour. So I did left turn lane warrants at that intersection, and they did not meet, based on AASHTO standards, on the existing traffic volumes in the area.
I mean, I do have to comment the applicant that I absolutely love the project, I love the design, and really appreciate the downzoning from commercial to residential. And I'm really excited to see the big houses. So, yeah, that's new and different. So, thanks.
This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on the item. Remarks should be directed to council only. Once public comments have concluded, council may choose to answer your questions. Madam Clerk?
We'll start with Cynthia Rogers.
Good evening. Cynthia Rogers, still Ward 4, yay. Because people say I'm against everything, let it be known, let it be heard. I'm for this project. I think it's a wonderful project. Lots of things going for it. The infill, protecting the wildlife, the thoughtfulness. It's not sprawl. We're adding housing. That's 642 housing units on 55.5 acres. Later on, I'll talk about the TIF, which is proposing now 677 housing units out of 121 acres. So there's a lot to like. I do understand the traffic concerns. It's always a problem adding traffic to neighborhoods. And maybe we can get some enforcement to slow people down instead of speeding along 36 and other places in town. Thank you.
Don Brackage.
Thank you all for the time. I'm a former Marine, a retired police officer, and just retired from administrator in the X-ray department at a hospital. All my jobs were integrity, and I've served people. And that's what I want to talk about, a little bit of integrity here. When I got my letter from the city of Norman, the map was entirely different than what's been proposed here. I called Mr. Joyce, asked him where the development was going to be. He said they were going to stop there at the electric poles that go across Willow Bend. Now, all of a sudden, we've added some more acreage south of there. Don't know why he told me something different. Mr. Hawkins, this traffic study, I live in that neighborhood. There was a counter put out for less than one day. I talked to all the people that I know that do traffic studies. Said there's no way they can get an accurate study done. They say they have to go to Willow Bend, but yet up on the north end, where our, I don't know if it's Merle Norman, but there's a Harris School on the other side on Ed Noble and the Catfish Cove. There's a circle there already that goes all the way across to Ed Noble. They could run a road right there instead of having to come on the Willow Bend. It's on the north side of the pond that's there right now. The apartments, again, about integrity, getting out the right information. We were first told that the apartments are going to be at the meeting that Mr. Joyce was in charge of. The big houses were going to be 2 stories. The center one's 4. You have an article that came out in the newspaper that had them at 3 in the middle. Now, all of a sudden, we've jumped up to 6. Mr. Joyce says that he only had a couple deals in the planning commission. I was at the same one. I heard a lot more from the commissioners asking to incorporate into the deal. I would just like for you to send this back to the Planning Commission until they can get their information correct, because they asked us to write protest letter. Well, that was a protest on the initial deal. Now it's not. It's changed over time. That's not fair to us. And Mr. Joyce talked about property values going up. I put my house for sale a month before. And once that came out, they were building apartments. No one wants to buy it. I even had a contract. The guy worked for the city of Norman. 4 days later, he come back and said, "Whoop, I went to work, told."
Don't see Rob Norman. Evan Dunn?
And done, Ward 7. I don't have a problem with this project proposal. I like the idea that we're going to have some more housing units. I like the walkability. I can't wait until Gunner can give a presentation and there will be a receptiveness to touting the fruit trees over here and the community-run gardens. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be beautiful.
Richard McCown?
Richard McCowan, 4409 Cannon Drive. I'm here in my capacity tonight as the chair of the AIM Norman Housing Subcommittee. And we have been doing a lot of work. We've got to add 23,000 housing units over the next 25 years. And this is a problem of math and maps. If you look at the map, and you're going to, there's a draft of it, we keep changing it, but if you look at it closely, we don't have really anywhere to build. We're really working hard trying not to build east. There's a tremendous amount of pressure to not build east. Historically, we average about 417 single-family detached houses a year in Norman. That number has been declining. We reached a peak in 2022 at 550. The year before, in 2023, or I'm sorry, in 21, last year we built 417, then we built 330 last year. We're going to build fewer this year. In order to meet the demand for housing, we cannot continue to do it with single-family detached houses. We don't have anywhere to build them. We're not going to open up more land to build them. And when you see the draft of our AIM map that's going to come out soon, you're going to see high density, this high density or higher, in lots of places, because we need 41 locations to build 300-unit apartment communities. Half of the adults in America, just slightly more, 50.2% of people over the age of 18 are not married. Apartments are a thing about choice. I've been working in downtown Oklahoma City for the last 14 years, and I didn't even realize how socially isolating the suburbs are until I started working in downtown Oklahoma City and discovered I'm a Muppet. I'm literally like Kermit the Frog. I know everybody that lives in the little community of Deep Deuce and works down there. When we look at an urban infill opportunity like this, it's transformative. And over time, it does increase property values because it creates a sense of place. It creates a place people want to be, activities, things to do, library, restaurants. All of that's dependent on concentration of people. This is a great project. And it's a competitor to a project I was in here presenting to you not 6 months ago. I'm literally speaking in favor of this against my own best interest.
David Floyd?
Mayor, Council, good evening. David Floyd, 3305 Riverwalk Drive in Ward 3. Before I make my comments, I'd like to point out that my law firm does periodically represent the city of Norman. I am not here in that capacity or speaking for anyone other than myself. I live in the Shadow Ridge 2 neighborhood, which is immediately to the south of this. Riverwalk Drive and then Shadow Ridge kind of zigzag across 36th. And I can attest to what my council member has said. There are cars flying up around that corner all the time. I've seen cars go through that white fence. And my concern is that the added volume with the current speed limits that we have and the lack of restrictions on 36 are just going to add to an already kind of dangerous traffic situation that we have. I've got no opposition really to this site plan or this project. This looks pretty good. But I do have concerns about what we're going to do. So my request would be, let's have something in place as this goes forward to kind of safeguard that street and to make sure that we can slow traffic down. I know enforcement's been mentioned a couple times. I've seen police officers on Lindsay frequently stopping people. We've got enforcement. It's not enough. We need to do something on 36th and Lindsay to slow the traffic down. So that's my only request. Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to maybe ask Mr. Hawkins if you might talk about the method of how the traffic study's done, on how it was done. If it was just a trailer that was out there for a day or whatever it might be.
Of course. So we put out traffic video cameras to collect the traffic. Usually we'll collect the AM, PM peak hours, 24-hour counts at the key intersections, which we'll be analyzing. So that typically gives us, you do it on a typical weekday, which is going to be a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. You don't do the off peaks, which obviously the weekends, Fridays are heavier, Mondays kind of sometimes an anomaly. So you want a normal average volume of traffic. We then take all the traffic, or then we generate it, project it up to whatever the full build-out year is. This happened to be 2030, using ACOG or ODOT growth rates. So we used a 1% in this case to bump up the traffic. Generated all the traffic from this development, dispersed it through all of the driveways. The reason why you're not seeing such an impact at a lot of these driveways is the fact that there are 7 different driveways that provide ingress and egress from this development. So when you take all that and just kind of disperse them for those peak hours, it helps, reduce the impacts at the certain driveways. So you analyze the existing traffic to get a baseline. Then you project it out to the 2030, you get your baseline as well, add the development traffic to it, and then you'll realize the actual impacts of the development at the build-out year. So doing so, you're able to see a kind of a pattern on what type of impact the development actually has, and that's how you make your mitigation measures based on that. So on top of that, like I did mention, we did do the left turn lane warrants. I did a traffic signal warrant at Willow Bend and 36th. It did not meet, as David has said, and did it a few times. All the intersections do operate at acceptable levels of service now and both at 2030 after the development is done.
Okay, thank you. David, I do have one more question for you. Is staff looking at any improvements to Norman Center Court and Ed Noble Parkway? It's kind of a interesting intersection.
We have a concept that was provided ironically by BJ probably 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And we are actively looking at that, yes.
Okay. And then you mentioned that you've been looking at Western View and Willow Bend, Western View, and 36th, and that it's pretty close to probably needing a signalization, and you would anticipate that the development of this and the build-out of it would probably put it over that threshold?
There's a reasonable chance that could happen, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I know 36th Avenue isn't a part of this project, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to speak to some of the kind of the inherent problems with 4-lane roads. Obviously, this posted speed limit on that road is 45 miles an hour, but as we've heard from multiple anecdotal evidence tonight, you drive the speed that you feel comfortable driving on a road. And a 4-lane open section of road with big lanes, buildings that are set back way from the road, just gives you this feeling that you can drive as fast as you want. And so I would say that enforcement is a problem, but road design is absolutely a problem. And so my request to the city manager, mayor, would be to have NPD establish a presence in this area over the next 18 to 24 months and really try to nail down some responsible traffic patterns in this area before this project gets built.
Motion on the floor is to adopt the resolution. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to adopt the resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 12, an ordinance rezoning property generally located south of West Main Street, west of Ed Noble Parkway, north of West Lindsay Street, and east of 36th Avenue Southwest from C2, General Commercial District, RM6, Medium Density Apartment District, with permissive use for a golf course, parkland, and PUD, Planned Unit Development District to PUD, Planned Unit Development District. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on second reading, section by section.
Motion to adopt. Second.
A motion to adopt and second. This is a companion item to the previous item. Are there any further questions from council regarding this item? Are there any speakers for this item?
Same, Cynthia? Lost my place, hang on. Don, would you like to speak again? Rob's not here. Evan?
Yes, Evan Dunn, Ward 7. This is just kind of a presentation tip for Gunner, for whoever it is that's going to be talking about this project later. The golf course, I think that you could kind of brand that as a potential food foresting space. This is an area that could be, yes, it could be used for superficial wastes of soil, or in the future, it could be used to maximize our ability to create value from soil, just as a suggestion.
Richard? And David? Okay.
All right.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to adopt the ordinance upon second reading passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on final reading.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion and second. Motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on final reading. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been adopt the ordinance upon final reading passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 13, a preliminary plat for the Bob Moore Farms North Addition, a planned unit development. I'll entertain a motion to approve or reject the preliminary plat.
Motion to approve. Second.
A motion and second. This to the previous two items. Are there any further questions from council? Are there any final clerk speakers?
Same
Nope.
speakers. Cynthia? Did you say no? Okay. Don? Evan? And Richard and David? Okay.
The motion on the floor is to approve the preliminary plat. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been adopt the preliminary plat passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Peacock, would you come up and relieve me, please?
Next item on the agenda is miscellaneous comment. This is an opportunity for citizens to address City Council Due to Open Meeting Act regulations, council is not able to participate in discussion during miscellaneous comments. Remarks should be directed to the council as a whole and are limited to 3 minutes or less. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Mayumi Windler.
Hello, Mayumi Windler, Ward 2. Okay, buses. So over Labor Day weekend, my car was in the shop. And it's really inconvenient that buses don't run on Sundays. And then it didn't run on the holiday either. So that was unfortunate. Anyway. I ended up walking to Walmart. That took all day. Taking breaks because it was really hot that day. Because I actually went there on Labor Day anyway. It would be really cool to have buses on Sundays like they do in Oklahoma City. Also, the Embark app sucks. Just when I rode the bus, before the pandemic, when I was riding the bus to campus, it was easy to just see, oh, the bus is here, okay, easy, not a big deal. It is impossible with the Embark app. So, because I did use the bus to go to the dealership to pick up my car on last Tuesday. So, let's see. The other thing I had was for the whole TIF deal. All of the out-of-town people that, can they actually support it? What if Norman decides, no, we're not going to the new TIF area? I know at least for me, I didn't go to Walmart for 10 years because they pissed me off. And I did not go to University North Park until the TIF went away. So it's just me, but I have disposable income and I choose where to spend it. That's all.
Dan Munson.
Hi, I'm Dan Munson from Ward 6. Tonight, I'm going to speak about the TIF and the possible impact it'll have on public safety. Our city hasn't funded a new fire station for Ward 5. And we haven't evaluated whether we need a new fire station south of Highway 9 for all the new growth that we're having. On page 62 of the city's budget, which discusses PSST, it shows a 7% reduction in revenue. So we're going from 17.1 million to 15.9. And there's no funds allocated or projected for the next 4 fiscal years for capital projects. Additionally, we'll pay $8 million over the next 3 years for debt service in our PSST fund. Any shortages of the PSST come from our general fund. On page 161, which is the fire department's budget, there's no funds allocated for capital projects. Why haven't we funded the new fire station and filled it with fire trucks, equipment, and firefighters? Do we really want to divert money away from the general fund before these fire stations are built and filled with personnel and equipment? By voting yes for the TIF, you're sending a message to our community that the entertainment district with arena is a higher priority than shoring up the needs of our public safety. Feel about that money being diverted away from the general fund when it comes time for contract negotiations or requests for a new fire or police station. Oklahoma City is nearing completion of their new arena at the fairgrounds, which will support 8,500 seats. According to their study, they're expecting 550 new construction jobs, both part and full-time, while building the arena. 370 jobs, both part and full-time, after the arena is built to support events and operations. This equals 920 total jobs. How am I supposed to believe that our entertainment district is going to create 5,000 new jobs? Lucas Oil Arena estimated 1,500 jobs for their 6,500 seat arena and 300 room addition to their hotel. Significantly less than 5,000 jobs. Thank you.
Cynthia Rogers.
Good evening again. Guess I want to thank Dan for reading the budget book. Who does that? Besides myself and Mr. Francisco, and occasionally Steve Ellis. So I too want to, say yay about the Moore Farms North development. I think that's the sort of thing we should shoot for. Adding housing, adding different housing, adding infill housing that's already connected to our services, that brings people closer to a struggling commercial area. It connects things, it brings it together. That's exactly the way we should be thinking. And the TIF, the arena TIF, is the antithesis of that. It's just not that at all. And what I would like for you to think about, before now and Tuesday, is what city problem are we actually addressing with a $600 million potential expenditure on an arena and entertainment district? Well, we don't have an unemployment problem. HVS study tells us this. We don't have a population growth problem. HVS tells us that, and lots of other people. We do have a housing problem, and that project is not doing much with the land there to address the housing problem. Only 30, I can do the math, 35 more housing units than the Moore Farms, which required 0 TIF. Some public infrastructure will need to be added, but very minor. So I would like you to ask, what problem are we solving with that expenditure? Not a city problem. It's not helping any of our, it won't add traffic, it won't add a lot of housing, it won't add affordable housing, it won't increase incomes because the jobs that will be there, not 5,000, no way. The jobs that will be there won't be high-paying jobs, they won't be higher-paying jobs than what we have. So why would we consider that big of a commitment? It's a massive spending program when it's not going to fix a problem that we have. OU Foundation owns the land, and they can develop the problem. In fact, people talk about the covenant. Well, that was their agreement. They set that up. And when they developed the UMP TIF, the original one, that was part of that deal. And now they want the city to help bail them out of the covenant that they helped create in the first place. I can't wrap my head around that. So please consider, I know you can vote yes. Should you vote yes? I think you shouldn't.
Paul Wilson. Lloyd Carroll.
I'd like to withdraw my nomination to run for city council. You guys are much smarter than I thought. But how that happened was I talked to somebody that worked for you, and then he was telling me that the code enforcement stole 2 of his motorcycles, his truck, and a bunch of other stuff, but since he's worked for the city, he hasn't got nothing stolen. So I said, I'm gonna run for the city council. The thief that was stealing from us last night, his name is Jeremy. He's been there for 10 years. And I think the police might have used him for training purposes. And that's okay as long as the police returns what's been stolen. I think that, paying the police and letting them steal our stuff is way beyond fair. So I just wanted to mention that, and then I'm gonna vote for this mayor again, even though he probably don't care for me too much. Thank you, guys.
Evan Dunn?
Oh, thank you. Evan Dunn, Ward 7. I have a couple announcements. This coming Friday at 7 p.m., before the second Friday Art Walk gets going, I'll be teaching a breath class at the well. And of course, next week, on Tuesday, I'll be teaching another class at noon. So if you want to take a lunch break and do some breath work, I'll be there. I'm trying to do everything that I can. I'm sure you all see me drive around. I paint phrases on my truck. I sell these youth thrones, furniture support pieces. Why? Because I want to do the most with my good. I see the connections between the efficiency of my life and the effects on the inheritance of future generations. You know, I have to use my imagination to imagine all of those generations of future species to come. And whenever I do that, I can't help but hold myself a little bit more accountable for my petty indulgences, just my wastefulness. You know, if I have, a handful of chips, and I know that those are simplified carbohydrates, and I know that that's increasing the amount of insulin that's going to be produced, and that it's going to make me pre-diabetic or pre-hypoglycemic. I account for that. But I also account for the fact that whenever I don't turn off the lights or whenever I leave the television on, that in some way is taking the natural resources that our future generations will use, not just to be frivolous themselves, but they will use that to negotiate with the Saudis. They'll use that to negotiate with the Chinese. I want those future generations of Americans, and I want all of the other future generations of all the other flora and fauna whose habitats are being threatened. I want to protect all of them. And you cannot do that unless you are optimizing to the ultimate precision your usage of energy and your usage and your cultivation of soil. And if someone wants to dispute that, I've built the podium from which they can make a contrarian case. There is no other case against efficiency in all things. Thanks.
Jeanette Coker?
Hello, I'm Jeanette Coker, Ward 4. And I've been thinking about our last council meeting about OTA and the toll road, and it reminded me of something. I'm sure you've heard the man is supposed to be the head of the house. The wife is the neck. She controls or determines where he's looking and what's getting his attention. I think you, our city council, is the head. As the head, you control the money and the actions. We, your constituents, are the neck, or we should be. We elected you to represent and benefit our wards and represent our best interest. I've been appalled that you, or that we, your constituents, have had to work so long and so hard to get you to do the right thing on the OTA resolution, especially since it seems that we and you were all on the same side all along. We all want that area preserved. But I've been trying to figure out where staff fits in. Who's running things? It's like the little girl that tells her daddy that she wants to redecorate her room in pink. They hire a decorator. But he says, no, orange is the best and most popular color right now. It's the most fashionable. The little girl says, no, I don't like orange, I want pink. Any daddy with a daughter knows what happens. The room is pink. Daddy is the head, that's the council. Daughter is the neck. She's the one most affected by the decision. That's us, the constituents. The decorator is staff, the professional hired to advise and implement what the head and neck decide to do. That's all I have to say. Think about it.
I believe that was our last speaker, so our meeting is adjourned.